This is a production of Cornell University.
I don't play video games, but I heard about this one and I liked the title, and I thought I'd use it for the talk. It's a huge copyright violation, but it really works for what I want to say. So, as most of you know, I've been working in berries for 40 years at Cornell, 4 years prior to that at Michigan State on blueberries. But over the time I've been doing this, I've been more and more compelled to feel like an obligation that we should share our science more with the community, to not just stay in our own little bubble of work. And a lot of people do that by extension responsibilities, but my work's kind of expanded to where that line between what's extension and what's, I don't know, volunteer work, community work kind of blurs a lot. And so I want to talk about my journey. It's like over the last 40 years of doing this evolution as a plant scientist. And I'm in phase retirement now, and I feel safe now being able to say what I want to say because no repercussions. But I want to address 4 questions today. Why is engaging with the public important? Why do we go wrong? Why do so many people try to avoid it? And what can one person do to facilitate engagement? So let's look at some data here on trust in public institutions. And we can look down and see these public institutions, and there at the very bottom are universities. Only 61% have trust in universities. And this has fallen over the years, but it's particularly bad for universities. And if you look at confidence in higher education, a Gallup poll, 64% of the public has only some or very little or no confidence in higher education. Why do you think that is? When people study this, why do you think? What are some reasons? Yeah.
My experience, I think that aspects of education have become a political talking points, like DEI, for example, are polarizing certain communities, kind of pitting them against institutions.
Yeah. Other thoughts on that? Yeah. Pardon? Oh, yeah, sort of DEI and some of that talk has been polarizing and separating people into just different camps. Yeah.
There's also some mistrust among certain communities because academics and researchers have abused certain data from ethnic community like African American and Latino community and use them for different purposes without their consent.
Okay, so Julia is pointing out that sometimes scientists use data from communities that without their consent and to try to make a particular point. Yeah. So people have identified like 3 big areas for that. Tribalism, talk about each of these a little bit. Not speaking the language of normal Americans. This is universities. We heard a little bit about this last week with Kirsten's presentation, and lack of emotional appeal. I mean, we're scientists. We don't have emotions. So when we talk to people, we leave that out. But we'll show why that's not very good. So tribalism, most people believe that universities are liberal institutions. And for a lot of people now, you can't trust anything coming out of a liberal institution because it's politically motivated and biased. That's just the truth. And a really good example of that is climate change. There was this big study done in 2017, got a lot of press. They looked at people's attitudes about climate change, and they looked at their educational background, their ability to understand scientific concepts, their personal experience with weather, individual characteristics, and they identify one thing to determine whether you believed in human-induced climate change or not. The major factor. What was it?
Political affiliation.
Political affiliation, absolutely. Democrats and liberals substantially more likely to believe science about human-caused climate changes than Republicans and conservatives. And part of this is because the press wants to present both sides. So when they show some people for and some scientists against, the public just feels like, well, nobody really knows for sure. It's somewhere in the middle, even though the overwhelming evidence is that humans induce climate change. And it's really hard to change people's view in a tribal issue, no matter how much data you show. In fact, studies have shown that when you show people with data that they're wrong, they'll harden their position even more. So it's really hard to get around that. Plus, humans suffer from confirmation bias, which is, we look for data that supports our own view. And you might remember Jim Inhofe there several years ago during a snowstorm in Washington, D.C., came to the Senate with a snowball and said, climate change isn't real. Look, I have a snowball in Washington here. It snowed. And because we look for data that support our own point of view and ignore contradictory evidence. So that's tribalism is one thing that gets universities in trouble because we're viewed as a tribe on the left politically, for the most part. The other thing is poor use of language. There's this group called the Third Way. They're trying to mediate between left and right, and they say they're trying to work with Democrats to talk like normal people and stop talking like they're leading a seminar at a university. Yes, that's what we're doing right now. We think language is one of the central problems we face with average voters. It shows that we're out of touch. And then you don't know James Carville, right? He's a Democratic consultant. Because I want someone to talk in clear, definitive language, communicate with people in elegant ways, and stop using that idiotic NPR jargon. I didn't know what that idiotic NPR jargon was. I had to look it up. And I listened to NPR this morning. I don't notice jargon, but here's what they say that puts people off. Communicate superiority, haughtiness, arrogance, it's divisive, elitist. And these are words we often hear at the university, but the public out there, they don't like it. It's off-putting, and it contributes to the lack of trust and confidence in universities when this language is being proposed and used a lot. And then the third one is lack of emotional appeal. And it's another study. Republicans use emotional language more than twice as often as Democrats. Democrats are very policy-oriented, data-driven, and that doesn't necessarily resonate with the public who wants to have emotional appeal to that. They want to connect with them, tell stories to them. And we tend to we're scientists, we have data, we think the more data we throw at people, the more they'll listen to us, but that's just not the case. We gotta get over that. Anecdotes beat data and hijack our judgment. So what's the solution? This Center for Health Justice says, you gotta start engaging with the community. Quit talking to them, start engaging with them. Be authentic and be simple about things you pass. Simply put, institutions should invest in community engagement, right? And if we don't, we're going to be considered irrelevant, unaccountable, distrusted, and self-serving. So that's the case, that's the reality. That's what we're facing right now. So what can we do as individuals? How can we engage with the community? So what I want to talk about is sort of my journey, I call through the Ivy thicket, to sort of do my work here as expected of Cornell, but also do some of this community engagement. And I'm going to tell you some stories about what we did right and what we did wrong. And yeah, so we'll see how that goes. The main way that we engage with the public at the university is through extension, right? And we provide information, but oftentimes we're just information providers. It's how you get promoted though, because that's what's expected, and you can count the contributions. I was looking at some of the production guides I've written over the years, lots of them, and it's great. I got promoted, everything like that. But when you're doing that, you're providing information, you're not really engaging with the public. You're just giving them something useful, which is great and valuable, but it's not really a high level of engagement. So another level of engagement, this was working with a retreat center to build a nature trail. This is working with Trumansburg Middle School to build a high tunnel for some of their students that aren't quite able to handle academics. They can learn how to grow things and give them some job training skills. And those are all good too. And it's a little bit beyond information provision. You're getting out there and working with people, but it's a one-time thing. It's like one day you do these things and you're back. I'm talking about things that maybe last over a longer period of time that really engage with communities. So can we do this? Can we do this at the university? Frank Rhodes, who some of you are around when Frank Rhodes is still president, he established this Cornell Public Service Center, and it has morphed over time into what's now the Einhorn Center for Community Engagement. And Richard Kiley's here, who's the director of that, and they do a lot of this work. They fund projects. So one of the things you can do if you want to get engaged in community is work with them to get some funding to help you get out there and do some of this engaged work. Another way we get students to engage with communities is the Leadership Monitor, which I helped establish about 10 years ago. students have to do a project over a sustained period of time, about a semester, where they get out and work with communities. And as part of their training, along with classes, and when they complete that, they can get a leadership minor at Cornell. I want to talk about some of the things that I've been directly, personally involved with. And I'm calling these case studies because sometimes in classes we talk about these as hypothetical case studies, but I can show you these are real. And I'm going to give you some examples of what goes on with this. So, organization. I was on the board of the Cayuga Nature Center. We were gifted a 32-acre parcel of land near Trumansburg. It's an old-growth forest. Spectacular trees, wildflowers, everything like that. The problem was, when you went into the forest, you could look right through it and see underneath the canopy all through there. It looked nice, but the problem was deer browsing was chewing all the saplings coming up, and normally in a healthy old-growth forest, you can't really see very far in it. There's so much vegetation. So we consulted with a couple of ecologists from both New York State and Vermont, came here, and they all said the same thing. You guys need a deer fence. Otherwise, you're not going to get any regeneration of these trees. So we found a donor and put up a deer fence around Smith Woods. And we were really happy about that. So as a responsible board member, what you advise your organization to do, we advised put up a deer fence, and they did. Should we have engaged the public with this? It's something that's our own private woodlot. Should be able to do with it what we want, right? What do you think? Should we have engaged the public? Yeah, Neil.
Yes, people might have strong feeling. Maybe they like seeing the fawns in the spring and they're like, why are you excluding the deer? What's happening to them?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What was another concern do you think that was raised when the fence was being proposed and getting ready to go up? Yeah. Public access was one, right? And we did have gates in there. There was one more that people really were unnerved about.
Aesthetics.
Aesthetics, how it would look, right? How it would look. So we got negative articles in paper, negative personal letters, negative phone calls, confrontational conversations. So we reacted to that. Probably should have been proactive instead of reactive. One lesson learned. But in the reaction, these are some of the things we did. I had breakfast with some of the people that are upset. Let's meet at Falls Tavern and have breakfast and talk about this.
You had to buy.
I had to buy, yeah. Public tours, a lot of public tours, phone calls, shared photos of a similar looking fence down here at the Botanic Gardens. It's not ugly and obtrusive. Public hearings, write some blogs. We wrote a book on the history of Smith Woods that we sold 1,000 copies of it. And we made a video on what an old growth forest is like there at that location. We had over 50,000 views. So again, other hikes on Mother's Day, winter. And we did this in reverse. We should have done it, maybe more of it first, to get people loving the woods and knowing why we had to put up a fence. It's really hard to like communicate with the public because people don't necessarily read things. But there was one person who was pretty much opposed to it. She wrote an article in Tompkins Weekly. I feel compelled to know I was initially opposed to the fence project. She grew up there. She thought it was going to impact the wildlife and so forth. And she goes, it feels pertinent to me as a reminder that electronic communication, email, Facebook, other social media, while helpful, is not very good. For me, the Woods Fence Project is only one of the issues where face-to-face conversations has cleared the air. I am thankful to have had the opportunity to sit with Marvin Pritts for a conversation, and he and I also encourage visitors and those interested to reach out for conversation or clarification. So again, it was the relationship, it was a connection, face-to-face engagement that sort of eventually came around to where now everybody's in favor of it. Oh, by the way, this is the fence. In the upper left-hand corner, lower left-hand corner, you can barely see it. But people's impression was that it was going to be this big, one person said, like you put around a junkyard, you know, those big orange fences. Wasn't the case. What could we have done better? Could have done a lot of this earlier, right? But we did. Case study number 2. a local entity. In this case, it was the town of Ulysses, wrote a grant and received approval, purchased a 32-acre forested area right in the outskirts of the village that they wanted to turn into a nature park, like a conservation area. And I was on an advisory committee to the town on some tree issues. They said, oh, Marvin, wouldn't you like to put in a trail through this land we just purchased? And the really cool thing about it is that there's a trailer park at one end, and then there's a farmer's market at the other end, and then the village. And wouldn't it be great if people could just walk through a trail coming down through the woods to the village and to the farmer's market without having to go out on Route 96, the busy highway, Malcolm Highway, or drive there? They could just walk there through beautiful woods. Would you do that? And yeah, I'd be happy to do it. And so we put this trail in. We labeled some trees so it could be both educational as well as a way for people to get out and walk and enjoy. Because, people at that trailer park had no access to natural areas. It was just up along a road, and that was it. So we thought that was really a good thing to do. Should we engage the public? Why? I should say we didn't. When I say we, I'm not going to take all the blame for this because it was really the town of Ulysses that facilitated that and asked me to do it. But yeah, people are shaking their head, yes. What are some of the ways that people might interpret our intention? And why might not go as anticipated? Any thoughts? Yes, Kristen.
Some people were worried about folks from the trailer park easily being able to walk into town through the woods, or maybe thought they were gonna like trash the woods or some kind of classist attitudes like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I invited 6 community members to come to the seminar today, and they're right here. So we'll ask them to read the comments that were said and spoken and written about this. So we'll go with number 1. Just stand up and read your comment about the trail.
Professor Pritts, let me tell you something. I don't like the fact that people are walking near my house. I live right by these woods, and I don't like the fact that they are coming this close. Think about it this way. What happens if a crazy stalker or someone found this trail? That's just another way for someone to use the trail in the commission of a crime. And there's kids here. Don't even get me started about the possibilities.
Okay.
Pritts.
Hey. Resident number 2.
With my neighbors that this was a big mistake and stupid idea. It is stupid that people can't take a TCAT bus to the farmer's market. And there's these stupid tree signs. I have seen weird people coming out of the trail through the trailer park.
Number 3.
Okay, Pritts, how does this benefit us? 98% of people here drive a car or actually take the bus to town or work. It's not safe to have random people, I don't know, coming out of the woods where there are children and that there's people's stuff locked in sheds and other stuff. It's another way for T-Burg to become a hippie town and a liberal town. Y'all just don't get the fact that we are protective of our area. And we don't want some Joe Schmo from somewhere walking in or around the park.
Number 4.
In this town, we need more housing for disabled people, but yet we make a stupid nature trail like the Gorge Road Trail. Smithwoods, Hector State Land isn't enough for people, but yet people of low income or homeless can't afford rent.
Trading off the trail for housing. Yeah. Number 5.
Have you ever thought about the servicemen and women that live in this town that might have to drive an hour away to get to the VA? But yet all you want is a trail to walk, to see pretty flowers and trees, and maybe a squirrel or 2. This is the most sickening thing I've ever heard. It makes me sick that the darn town only cares about this nature and nature. Newsflash, everyone there are humans that serve to give you freedom, that lives in this town. I'm trying to read this exactly as it is, that can't find help or can't make it to their appointments to even get medicine to make them feel better. But all you're worried about is marshland whoopie-doo. My father's health, my grandfather's health are more vital to me than a stupid nature trail. But y'all want a stupid nature trail. I will not rest until this trail is shut down and housing or clinical buildings are built. You all make me sick. The owners put a darn trail for tree huggers and liberals who can't wait to screw over the town.
Hey, number 6.
Then there's, of course, littering and whatnot. There's a trail in Smith Woods. Go use that. We don't want this piece of shit trail near our house in Flanders.
So, what could we have done better? That kind of goes without saying, right? Let's do a third case study. But what it's interesting, like immediately they politicize it and think that this is a liberal thing, which is it's nature. It's like, you know, it's not a liberal or conservative issue, but it's politicizing everything because it's seen through the eyes of tribalism.
Was there a big expense that was taking away from
There was no expense. It was volunteer time. It was all volunteer time. But in their mind, it's trading off something they feel really important against something they don't feel is important. Third case study, a group of citizens decides that they want to develop a 17-acre parcel of land owned by the town. This is Mecklenburg, and turn it into a playground, a pavilion, a nature trail. You've been asked to help bring that dream into existence because you've experienced the trail construction, plan ID, and so forth. So as a responsible advisor, what would you advise the community to do? Now you have some experience. What would you advise them to do? Yes, Ashley.
People affected first.
Yeah, talk to the people affected. Exactly. Right. So you do need to engage the public. Here's what we did before. Public meetings, tell them what we had in mind. Articles in the paper, tell them what we had in mind. Personal letters to people that were neighbors around the park. Community work days. Hey, volunteer to help build a trail. Once you come and start working with it, you have some ownership in it, you're less likely to be opposed to it. Public tours, a couple of times, take people around, show them what's there. We laid out the trail, proposed trail with orange ribbons in the fall, and we invited people to walk the proposed trail all during the winter, and we didn't actually cut it and make it until spring. So people had a chance to weigh in on whether they liked where it went or not. We did a documentary as well, so people could watch it on YouTube. And as a result, very, very little opposition. And this is the park today. And in fact, on Saturday, they're having a ribbon cutting to dedicate the new park with its pavilion, playground, and nature trail. So, where have we heard about the importance of building relationships before? Right here in this seminar series. The first seminar, Ithaca Children's Garden, talked about the importance of relationships. Elizabeth Buck, in Extension, talked about the importance of building relationships. Even the olive oil guy talked about his hypothesis that the reason a Mediterranean diet is beneficial is because people eat those foods when they're sitting around together in a social situation. It's not necessarily the foods themselves, because the Mediterranean diet really varies a lot from region to region. It's the community coming together, people coming together to take their time and eating that makes it so powerful. And I would argue that Kristen's seminar last week sort of addressed some of that too. So what can you do? What are some things you can do? Here's some things we've done over the years. We've invited second graders to come to the Cornell orchards and tour around in the fall. Up until COVID and we stopped doing that, we had 1,000 second graders a year visit Cornell orchards and see that. That's a different audience than what we're used to engaging, but I meet kids now, they're like in high school and they say, oh, I remember you giving me a tour when I was in second grade and we ate all this weird stuff, all this weird fruit. So that's very cool. Graduate students, Samantha Bosco and with J. Mount Pleasant, we did a project with Native peoples, indigenous communities in New York State. We had tree walks, workshops. Planted a food forest. I had a student with an undergraduate student who wanted to work with Paiute Indians in California on some of their traditional foods. And again, these Native communities, you don't just walk in there and say, hey, I'm here to help you. You got to build a relationship with them first. And Milo spent a year living with them to do his work as an undergraduate, to build that relationship and trust before he started working with them. We've done some work on pawpaw with the Seneca Nation out south of Buffalo, working together with them to design and plant a pawpaw orchard, which is, for those of you who don't know, pawpaw is a native fruit. And we invited some of the Seneca representatives here, and we fed them pawpaw for the first time they ever had it. It's a native fruit. They said, we don't know about it, but we have lots of words for it in our language. We just don't know what it is. And it was really great to watch their eyes whenever they bit into a pawpaw. It was really cool. So we have a planting out there that we established. This is cool. This is a BioBlitz. Kathy, who was your technician that was a co-chair of this committee? Remember?
Scott, correct?
Scott, yeah. He and I worked on this BioBlitz. A BioBlitz is a one-day activity where you invite, mycologists, plant people, plant science botanists, entomologists, everybody to come together to one place and see how many species they can identify in a 24-hour period. It was very cool. It brought people together from all over campus, other different universities around the region. They came to the Cayuga Nature Center and did a 24-hour blitz. Kathy was part of that. And it was really great. Oh, ornithologists, everybody. And this was done several years ago. And we had the opening ceremony. The dean was there. Chris Smart was there. The town supervisor, the chief, Sam George from the Cayuga Nation came down. We had this. And I'm going to try to show a video of this.
One of the emphases of this event is not just the science. The science is obviously the core of it. But integral to this event, really integral from the very beginning, is to bring that science to the general public. Those of you who are scientists, welcome. We are thrilled that you are here. Those of you who are educators, we are thrilled that you are here. One of the aspects of this event is to get these two communities to talk to each other, much more than they have been. This place, the Cayuga Nature Center, is dedicated to interpreting the natural history of the Cayuga Basin, and that includes its biodiversity. So this is not somewhere in the Amazon where we'll discover new species with every step, but what many of you know far better than I is that there are still new things to be discovered here. There are still things that no one has ever seen before.
There's a grass spider that makes this shrimp. This is an adult male.
We need to learn to be really great advocates of one another. So I think this is a type of event where even as scientists, we can learn a lot about the biodiversity that another group is studying and really become advocates for one another and advocates for biodiversity as a whole.
They'll kind of hang out underneath a flower, bite onto it with their mandibles, and start shaking their wings violently, and then you'll see pollen dropping out of the flower.
It was a video about the various groups and the species that they were finding, and we kept tallies, and it was like a contest to see who could identify the most species. But the great thing was it brought the whole community together, not just the scientists, but we had non-academics come too and help participate in collecting things and bringing it to Kathy and saying, what is this, and so forth. It was really fun. There was one thing we just did, just did it because I just thought it'd be a good thing to do. Another thing I thought would be a good thing to do, there are very few opportunities for adults to get together to learn and talk about different topics. Like we have seminars, like so many seminars, But if you're not at Cornell, where do you go to learn about stuff that's going on in your world and talk about it? So I said, we're going to start this thing called Community Forum. So we found this building on Trumansburg and Main Street associated with a church. There's a fellowship hall on the side of it. They said, you can use that. And I just started inviting people and advertising it on Facebook and in the paper and all. And we just covered all these topics. So Tuesday night, people come out, 7 o'clock, we've got a speaker to talk about some topic. And people are so appreciative because they don't have opportunities like we do to have seminars. This is one, Bob Howarth, some of you know him. He was at the World Economic Summit at Davos, and he came back and talked about US energy policy. But all those other topics on the other page, we talked about as well. And most of the people that I know at Cornell that I invited to come out, not always, but to talk about some issue. And the public really appreciates that. Again, it's kind of a continuous kind of engagement with the community that I think people really like. Involving students in this is important too. I had a student who I advised, she developed a plan for a food forest. And she identified sites and plants that would grow well together and come up with these plans that now are going to be adopted by the town of Ulysses in their new recreational park for planting a food forest. So that student was very much engaged with the community in that process multiple times. Another thing we've tried to do is involve classes in this. And we had a class for first-year freshmen. We thought it'd be a really good idea to get them out and engage in the community. One of the projects we do is I guess, called Service Learning Project. But we have taken them to landscape Habitat for Humanity houses. So this is before and this is after. We've cleared an old historic site for a foundation of a house, historic house. Smith Woods, we made trails in there. Removed invasive species. This is that famous habitat trail that my residents came to protest. We had the students actually build that trail, put in bridges, and they built a picnic table, took it apart, carried it into the woods and reassembled it, labeled the trees, and they felt like they made a big impact on the community. It's really cool. I didn't share with them the comments that I got because I didn't want them to go away with a bad impression, but it was really fun. We had a great time. We worked at Teganic Park and helped reestablish some old trails that were overgrown and no longer used. We worked at the Conservatory of Fine Arts to landscape their building. Again, students using their plant knowledge, although it's not a lot, it's just a little bit. So you can see happy people because they made a difference. The hospital, if you've driven up there, it was a terrible, overgrown landscape, weeds everywhere. At least it was a couple of years ago, not anymore. Before pictures on the left, students got to work, cleaned everything up. Those fellows were so appreciative of the help. This new cataract trail at Teganic Park, the park manager there is really happy that we helped. Here's all the partners we worked with over time. See a bunch of them. So it's not, all you have to do is ask and figure out what the students can do. It's not a big deal. The last challenge I had was, I teach a class on berry crops. How can I get my berry crops class to engage in the community? So that was a real challenge for me to think about. So what I did, and I think it worked pretty well, was I worked with extension educators to find a farm that berries were going to be a part of it, but it was like a just getting started farm. It wasn't like a well-advanced farm. And I put the class in teams of 4 to 6 students each in groups and gave each team information about the farm. We interviewed the grower, and then they got this information. They went off in their teams and they developed a business plan for the farm as teams. And at the end of the semester, using what knowledge they learned from the grower, what we learned in class and all, they came up with a plan for the farm. And then we bring the growers to the class for a lab session, and the students would present their ideas to the farmers about what they would do if they had their farm. And it was wonderful. The students really, really got into it because instead of a hypothetical situation, abstract situation, it was a real farmer they were working with, and the farmers loved it because they were getting all these ideas from these students they had never thought of before that they could either take or leave. They didn't have to, they weren't obligated to use them, but they really loved the ideas. So just an example of this one farm. Yeah, wow, you're truly amazing, really impressed, the amount of information. Talks about how they followed through with some of the recommendations to put up a high tunnel. And Carly, I'm just amazed at the work your students accomplished. They've never been on the farm, yet they were spot on. Amazing creative ideas, refreshing. Thanks so much for choosing our farm for this project. And then last semester, Emily and Abby, we had so much fun chatting with the class. I know our family situation has some challenges, but we're excited to hear everyone's ideas. So I think these are some examples, I think, that maybe you can think about and see how maybe you can do that with your class or even as an individual and use your subject matter expertise to benefit the community at large. It's interesting when you ask faculty to rank these 3 areas of knowledge by priority. Faculty rank it. First thing you need to teach is subject matter. Second thing is technical skills. And third thing is like professional soft skills. But when you ask employers what's important, what they look for, it's the exact opposite, right? It's the exact opposite. Professional skills are most important. This comes out time and time again in surveys. And so my question is, how do we prepare students for this kind of work? We prepare them really well for working in the lab and working on their own, but we don't prepare students for engaging with the larger community. And we got to figure out how to do that. So I think there's lots of challenges to that. I think a lot of the faculty believe that public engagement is fluff. It's not really truly academic. It's just soft and not important. It's also time consuming. You know, I don't get paid for going to breakfast at Saturday morning with a bunch of people from the community to talk about what we're trying to do. It's hard to assess. It's hard to assess. It's uncomfortable. A lot of times our universities were set up for giving credit for like the publications and so forth, but how do we count this engagement work that's outside the classroom? We talked about how providing lots of data doesn't persuade people, and yet that's what we do. We think, oh, we just need to do another study and show them this to persuade them to our position. Scientists don't like confrontation. And we hear about the ivory tower where all the scientists gather because they don't want to be out there and be vulnerable to the community. I don't know, I just think it's something that we should think about doing. Otherwise, we're going to lose our relevance and credibility in the community. And sometimes organizations even acknowledge your work by dedicating a garden to you. So that's the end of my slides. So, comments? Questions? Ashley.
Yeah, I just, having come from a different discipline in urban planning, you know, I think about how can we better collaborate with other disciplines that have to take classes in community engagement as like a requirement. And I know that they would love to work with people in plant science, all those projects you mentioned, like they'd be great partners to work with on those kinds of projects. And it just makes me think also just, you know, how could cooperative extension be a more regular part of like capstone projects, you know, what we're doing with students, because we're here, you know, we're part of the university and we should be connecting the dots.
Yeah, we're pretty siloed, right? We don't necessarily talk to each other. I think it was one thing Richards tries to do is bring groups together from different parts of the university and talk to each other through the Einhorn Center. Yes, Hannah.
Thank you so much for such an important and insightful talk. And yeah, I really enjoyed learning about your community engagement. And something that I noticed was that all of your case studies were about community outreach that didn't really have to do with your research. And I have heard feedback as graduate students, really important to align your service with whatever research you're doing so that it seems relevant when you're going for future jobs. But I kind of wanted to hear if you had any input on navigating that or like exploring other ways of engaging the public in science that maybe doesn't have to directly do with our research.
Yeah, I'm assuming that when you take classes and learn things at Cornell, you're learning more than just your little narrow area of research, right? So for me, you know, my area of research is berries, but I've always been interested in plants. So, you know, I kind of identify the trees, right? And kind of know a little bit about landscape management. So you just need to know a little bit, and then you get tapped for doing some of these other things that aren't directly in line with your research. So I would say, no, it doesn't have to be. You can learn things beyond your research and make those learnings valuable to the community. So I would say that's wrong in the strict sense, that you can be broad and have that be valuable. You'll be recognized as a plant scientist and people will assume you know a lot of things and you can learn some of those things that can be valuable. So don't restrict yourself to just those opportunities because it's too narrow. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much, Marvin. I really like your approach that, you know, it's important that we take on these difficult to assess outreach projects, right? But do you think that the university feels the same way when they're assessing faculty members or graduate students in their progression? Like, do they value this work as much as you do, or as much as you want them to? Like, and how do we make them value it more, or help them understand how to assess it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I ask about how valued is this at the university. I think the university generally kind of values it. And Richard can talk about that. Amy can talk about that. They've been involved with the public service center and so forth. And I think they value it there. And I think the college values it to some extent too, because now they're talking about having a service component to your job description. So it's not just teaching, research. I think where the problem comes actually is at the department level, where people that actually vote on your tenure package don't see the value in it. So I think the culture change has to happen within units because that's where then it carries through. So very difficult for the college to turn somebody down for tenure or promotion if they've done a lot of this kind of work that the department says this is really valuable. This is making us relevant in the community, making an impact. Might not have resulted in a paper, but look at how many people were impacted by this. I think it starts local, it builds up. That's my opinion. Yeah. I mean,
we implemented the community forum or the seminars for the community.
Yeah.
How did you initially get the word out to the community to come in?
Yeah, the question is how do you get the word out to the community whenever you're trying to do these public forums? That's really hard. You try to use Facebook. We have a local paper, a weekly paper, try to get in there, put posters up around town. The most common comment I get from people is like, oh, I wish I'd have known about that. I would love to have come. And it's like, I don't know what else you can do. It's just really hard to communicate with the public and let them know because we don't have like one place where everybody goes to find information anymore. But yeah, that's a big challenge. We still face it. But yeah, we had Kurt Jordan come to talk about indigenous people's issues. We had over 100 people come to that from a little village at Trumansburg. We had Lanny Joyce come talk about reducing your carbon footprint. He's the engineer who designed the cold water treatment, lake source cooling thing. We had about 100 people come to that. So, but yeah, getting the word out is really hard. Yeah, and then Heidi had a
development background, so this is informing it. But one of the things I'm struck by, and this is not a criticism of you, Martin, like as you know, I've always loved your work. But I'm just mindful of the richness that it brings to our work. So it's not only this engagement to allay community fears, but the knowledge that they bring to our work. I've always considered my position at Cornell to be a position of privilege to have the time to think about these issues at the intimate level that I get to, but also then the beauty of these relationships is that it pairs local knowledge, which has its own critical value, and our insights from looking at this across a wide variety of contexts and puts them together for the benefit of both. And I just don't want us to forget that in this context.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, it's certainly very true in the situation in Mecklenburg where we worked together from the very beginning. Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
I had a question.
Yeah.
I was curious if there's a university-wide push or like anybody, you've mentioned a case where you had class solve a problem for a community member, kind of using curriculum for extension. And I'm curious if that's just professors do that on their own. Is that something that anybody's endorsing? Hey, let's all these hypothetical, because half my classes were doing these hypothetical case studies. Could we use that for extension to connect better with community members and present perhaps solutions or options for them to consider?
Yeah. So the question was about using real situations instead of hypothetical situations in classes and how many people do that. I start off with hypothetical situations and it just occurred to me, why not use a real situation? They're all around us. And just started doing it. Richard has a bird's eye view of the university. What's the situation with using students to engage in real world problem solving out in communities? Do you have a sense of that from your work?
It's expanded massively over the past 15 years. So now we have over 300 courses that are being taught. I think when we first started in 2015, we might have had 30 or 40. So, and to your point, you know, with Einhorn Center, since we have this university-wide umbrella approach, we went from individual courses, individual faculty, to working with departments. So we have a lot of grants for departments to shift their curriculum and learn how to sequence it, and then develop those skills you're talking about that often aren't emphasized. And then now we work with the college deans. So it's sort of like a bottom-up, top-down, sideways approach. And the number of people that are doing this work now is just dramatically changed. And also hitting on promotion and tenure guidelines as well. I'm pleased to say that's taken a long time. It's very sacred. So, and it's all been the same kind of approach. Look at Cornell's community, build relationships. I really appreciated that about your presentation. It's all about building relational trust, especially when you're introducing something that's new to people that they haven't heard about. They feel ownership over something. It's like, how is this going to impact me? So I think taking that approach has been really helpful.
For those of you online, Richard Kiley, Einhorn Center, said that 10 years ago, there were about 30 or 40 courses that were really considered engaged, and now it's up to over 300. So it's really expanded a lot. So they're there to help. If any of you faculty want to do something like this, talk to Richard and his crew, and they'll give you ideas and help you walk through it.
Check in chat. If there's any questions.
Okay. Oh, Lee Cass has pointed out that Liberty High Bailey talked about this thing in 1919, so it's not new. Yeah, Amy.
I'm just curious with the number of years of experience you've done and presentations all coming from like you as a faculty, you make connection, you deliberately go out to breakfast with the people and then with the disgruntled people and just making all that connection, a relationship and to be able to formulate projects and opportunity for your course and for students. And I'm just wondering on the flip side, how would the community members or partners or organization that wants to partner with universities? I'm just curious from all your experience, years of experience, and how might they be able to get into the formulating that partnership from their side, rather than starting at universities?
Yeah, so for those of you online, Amy's asking about, you know, we build partnerships by going out into the community, but what if a community wants to build a partnership with us? How do they connect in with us? I think that's hard for them because we're a very intimidating place and they don't really know people there and they just don't know exactly how to go about it. Some people are astute and they know about it. Like there are Cornell graduates that are in governmental positions and they can direct people the right way. But I think it's really hard for an organization that needs some help. They don't know what Cornell can provide, and they're kind of scared of us. Again, I think it's another reason to try to lower those barriers and get out there so people know who we are. So then they're not afraid to talk to us. So even ask us, hey, who could I talk to at Cornell that can help with such and such? We need to just not associate with people from Cornell so much, maybe, in our social life and community life. All right, time's up. Thank you very much.
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.